Hey guys, welcome to Filmberg Live, episode 11. I'm Pollock Taylor.
I am Wes Fisher.
Oh, and we're here tonight. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Every single week, I am so stoked that we make it to get to these chairs and that we find a gracious, awesome guest to come join us and hang out. And this week is no different. We have another excellent guest in the house, and I'm really excited to kind of just see where the conversation goes. So, Wes, what's new in the world? Tell us a little something about what's going on.
Well, we have a couple big movies. Shazam.
Oh,
Yes.
Superhero movies.
Feeling electrified this week.
My heart is the shape of a superhero movie. I don't know if people know, but it's a medical marvel.
Yeah.
Well, no pun intended. Oh, God. So,
Yeah, staying on that track, Brightburn might be getting an R-rated version.
ooh. When's it supposed to release?
May,
May.
yeah.
Ooh. Brightburn's a good topic. Let's not go too much further into this episode. Guys, I want to get right to it. Our guest tonight is a local entrepreneur. He is the founder of a website company. The website is pipercreative.co. They work with B2B and B2C clients. That's fancy terminology for business to business and business to customers. And what they really focus on is leveraging the power of social media and influencer marketing. And it makes it really, really cool. Just because, hey, we're here on YouTube doing this thing. So it's a perfect walking the line between the art that we love and the entrepreneurial path that I just can't help but follow. So without further ado, this is Aaron Watson.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here,
so
man.
I'm excited. And thank you for the intro. Just to put a little bit more icing on top of that cake.
Yes.
Piper's kind of built on the premise that a lot of people don't understand either just how to execute media about themselves, how to do it effectively, or they have some sort of mental hurdle that they need to get over in order to make it happen. It's the type of thing that people in our generation or even younger generations take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll be in a room with a 45, 55-year-old executive explaining how easy it can be for him or her to show up in video on LinkedIn 10 times a month, and their understanding of what the obstacles are married to their own hangups about they didn't grow up with a camera in their phone in their pocket.
Yeah.
And it's a massive unlock, and that's really the essence of what we're delivering with Piper.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and it's true, because one of the things I always find, we operate a small store on eBay. We've started with actual physical locations here. You can catch us at Miller's Crossing Fleetique 7 days a week. And one thing that I find is, yes, trying to communicate anything that's on a newer platform of any kind is very, very difficult. With a generational gap, and those generational gaps, I'm finding it's not even necessarily about age. It's some of it's just demographics. Like, not everybody in their 20s is exceptionally good with this because they grew up in a household where technology wasn't one of the driving factors. Like me growing up, my parents loved technology, so like I have a love for technology, and I've always lended myself to it because I loved it so much. But in this technology driven world, communicating concepts is easier and harder all at the same time. We have so many ways to do it, but
And one of the biggest unlocks, though, for if we're going back to that 45, 55-year-old executive that we have in our heads,
mm-hmm.
this is someone with decades of experience. They know their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe tech is like starting to pass by. They have so much real world experience, so many things that they can call upon. And the only gap that they have to more people being aware of their skill set is that media fluency.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to get those characters in particular over the hurdle of is, if you can get comfortable looking into the camera and talking, if you can get comfortable sitting in front of a mic and saying your piece for 7 minutes, then you're going to have the opportunity to scale yourself, whether that's through consulting, whether that's through the services that your company provides. And that is the real gap that we see, because on the flip side of it, like, I can also relate to, I'm only 27 now, but being even younger, feeling like I wanted to say something and I wanted to have a voice, but you know, people call it imposter syndrome sometimes, and maybe that's negative self-talk. But the other side of that is, to some degree, you also realize that, you know, maybe I'm actually talking out of school. Maybe I don't actually have the chops to back this up, and I'm just trying to say something. And a lot of the characters that we work with kind of have the opposite issue. And I think exploring both of those is really interesting, but those are actually very kind of different hills to stand on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're definitely completely different sets of hurdles, but that's very accurate. So Piper Creative, when did this company start exactly?
It's a year and a half old, and the concept for Piper came out of my dome. I was walking back from the grocery store, listening to a podcast that had nothing to do with this idea, and I basically recognized that not just the next generation of businesses, but businesses interested in evolving or continuing to exist, were going to need these media making capabilities, and really through the lens of digital storytelling in the form of audio and video. I took this idea to my co-founder, Hannah Phillips. She's the chief creative officer, amazingly, spectacularly talented visual media artist. She's got a really cool project that she's working on, if anyone wants to go follow her on Instagram. But she is the yin to my yang. So clearly I can talk, I can chop it up. I'm comfortable in a boardroom setting. She is amazing behind an editing suite, whether it's Photoshop, graphic design, video editing, painting, fine art, and being able to deploy our respective strengths and skill sets against these problems is the essence of Piper. I come in, I get the executive sitting the right way, saying the right thing, relaxed, feeling comfortable, and then she knows how to make them look good on set and also in post-production, so that when you blend those two things together, it's a classic example of 1 + 1 = 3.
That's awesome. Okay, well, yes, and making things exponential is the name of the game in this day and age. So, well, yeah, let's give her a shout out. What's her handle on Instagram?
Hannah P. Oh, she's gonna get mad at me. Her Twitter. So we were talking about this before, where the handles are different on different platforms.
Yeah, yes.
It's Hannah P. Media on Twitter, and it's HP Media on Instagram. If I got that wrong, HP Media. HP Media.
That's slick.
It's the real deal.
How did Hewlett Packard not reach out to her yet?
Yeah, well, they just have HP, so they have the market cornered. Like, you know, some people are like, I'm looking for like my first name, and maybe it's inactive, maybe I can go swipe it. She has no chance at HP. That's not.
No, never. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, so it's a year and a half old. That's awesome that you heard it. What podcast? I gotta know what podcast. What were you listening to? Do you remember?
It was the A16Z podcast. It was not related to that at all. It was some A16Z is a venture capital firm. One of the new ones on the block that really, I mean, they're what they do well, and maybe I'm actually like figuring this out as we're talking now, is they do media so much better than every other old venture capital firm. They have a marketing department. They've had their own podcast. They've launched their own YouTube. They do their own event series, which a lot of other venture firms do not do. And that gives them this differentiated branding. And in venture, the name of the game is deal flow. You want the cool, hot, ascendant companies to want you to invest in them, because where on one end of the spectrum you hear all these startups say, oh, there's not enough funding, we can't get money, we need more money in Pittsburgh, and really at the end of the day they are not exceptional businesses. They may be good businesses, they may be great businesses, they're not exceptional. When Snap was popping, Snapchat was like blowing up, and they were looking at a Series E, there were investors just showing up at the office trying to get their money into the business. They were beating them away with sticks. And so in that form, that's like the other side of the hill that most people will literally never experience. But for firms like Andreessen Horowitz, when they're trying to get into the very biggest deals, and you know, they got into Lyft, they got into a number of enormous companies, that's based upon the brand that they've earned, not only from the media, but also Ben Horowitz and Marc Andreessen, the founders' accomplishments as entrepreneurs themselves.
I've never even heard of these guys. That's so impressive.
You've heard of Netscape though, right?
Yeah.
Marc Andreessen came up with Netscape.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
No way. Well, I mean, hey, it just goes to show, like, keeping your thumb on the pulse is like you know what it's all about. It's what you guys do, and the way that you speak about just everything so far is just so eloquent. I'm like, so where's your book? Did you have a book yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's coming down one day down the road. I do read a lot. I do just absolutely steep myself in the language of business, the ideas of business. I study the successful venture capitalists. I study the successful entrepreneurs. I study the successful Wall Street guys, not because I'm trying to be them, but I'm trying to take the things that they do well, rip off their best ideas. That's a Steve Jobs quote. We're willing to steal shamelessly when there's good ideas out there. And not have any faults about that. Like, so, one of the things I get, I don't know if people are going to get this, but people make fun of or like rib me a little bit, saying that I'm trying to be Gary Vee a little bit with the way that we vlog as a company and some of the things that we do. Yes, Gary Vaynerchuk. And it's like, well, he's clearly on to something. It's clearly working. So if we can take a couple of his strategies and do it effectively, we're going to do that. But it's not so reductive as to say I'm just running the Gary Vee playbook, or I'm just running I'm not running the Mark Andreessen playbook, but like theoretically, you steal something from all these stories and then you reassemble them to make your own story. For example, those are modern big names. There's also Samuel Zemurray. So Samuel Zemurray, you've heard the term a banana republic, not like where you get a shirt, but like where there was, in Central America, some government corruption going on.
Yeah.
He's the reason that that term.
Oh my gosh.
So he grew up an incredibly poor Jewish immigrant.
Okay.
Is in the south of the United States and looking for opportunity, takes a train down to New Orleans. In New Orleans, there's these shipments of bananas that are coming in, and what they'll do is they'll take all the bananas that are not ripe yet directly to the market so that people can pick them up, buy them, and literally just in doing that, even though they're throwing away all these bad bananas, they still make a profit, this shipping company. He runs up to them and says, why are you throwing these other bananas away? They say, these are going to go bad in the next 24, 48 hours. We can't sell them.
Yeah.
So he scrapes them all together, puts them on a rail car, and starts riding back home, back up into the southern United States. At each stop, it's not even a phone call. It's telegraphs ahead that he's going to be at the rail station with bananas, sells the bananas the whole way back, ends up making a profit on no upfront investment because they were just going to throw it out anyway. So they might as well give some bananas to the poor Jewish immigrant. Ends up leveraging that into his own banana empire where he's overthrowing governments in Guatemala. He is, fighting for shipping routes against United Fruit, which was the largest banana company or fruit company at the time, grows so big that he ends up taking over as a smaller company, United Fruit, and becomes so big that he then dedicates the rest of his life to philanthropy and has a very large role in the establishment of the nation of Israel.
Oh my gosh.
So those stories, like, I'm not going to go establish another nation sometime in the future.
Yeah.
But that framework of...
Not with that attitude.
It's so easy to tell the story exactly on that idea of attitude. It's so easy to say, I have nothing. There's nothing I can do. Like, I'm not rich. I don't have a lot of followers. I don't have, the super well-connected uncle who can open all the doors for me. This guy had nothing. Rode a train car and picked up garbage and resold it to start his empire. What excuse do you have?
That...
Such a good point.
First of all, United Fruit is the upcoming feature from Filmberg, and it's all about this guy. What a wild story.
Yeah.
What a wild... So I can't believe I've never heard of it. Like, Netflix has to be developing. If they're not, they've already picked it up with, their supercomputers. Already listening to everything on the internet.
The book, though, if people want to do it, is called The Fish That Ate the Whale. And it's exactly that. The fish that ate the whale.
That's
small
awesome.
Beginnings into something big.
Dude, that's a great story. That's awesome. So, yeah, it's... and that's like, I think that's what it's all about. Like, first of all, that guy just excellent eye for an opportunity. He was like, well, you're going to throw them away to me.
Exactly.
It's like, well, let's see what we can do because it's like, and that's kind of what it comes down to, I think, is he was in a position too, where he was like, well, what do I have to lose? Right. And that always makes me think of a Steve Jobs quote, which is, we all die. So we're all already naked. There's nothing, you don't have anything to lose. But in this, capitalistic, materialistic world, it really feels that way, that there is something to lose. But at the end of the day, I don't know, like on my current trajectory, one of the things that I found is that being consistently doing and working towards my goals, like nonstop, has been the most rewarding experience, even though it's also been probably the most stressful. Like I watch my hairline recede daily, just from the stress.
Yeah.
And, but it's like, it's one of those things. It's why not go for it? Like you really, at the end of the day, you have nothing to lose. And if you don't ever go for it, all you have is to look back and wonder.
But once you had the taste of really going for it on your own and experiencing the highs and lows of that, it's not the like persistent ecstasy of some short bender using some sort of substance. It is ups and downs, but the growth that comes from that and the joy that comes from being in your element, doing your thing, is so much deeper and richer of a fulfilling experience relative to those other things. So there's people, I've seen it in people in my social circle who were I have to escape my life because Monday to Friday sucks. And so Friday night through Sunday morning is just, rager, bad habits.
Yeah.
And they've kind of, matured out of that now. And the recognition of, I'm like eagle eye at a new North Star that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm a little impatient. Maybe there's still work to be done there in terms of where the expectations lie. But the depth to the satisfaction that they feel, as opposed to the superficial nature of those alternative pursuits.
Yeah.
And really that's what gives you the energy to keep going and work harder than anyone else to, my day to day. Like I'm here at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
I was up early in the morning.
Yeah.
I've had 2 meetings. I've been working on proposals and I'm still here. And
it's Saturday, no less. If you're not watching this live, it's Saturday.
Yeah, but the energy, where does that energy come from? Because it's very easy to ask that question or to like make it super simple. Oh, Aaron was lucky enough to have that energy. Aaron was gifted with that energy. I didn't always have this energy.
Yeah.
It's only something that I can find in myself for things that really matter. And Piper is something that I anticipate working on until the end of my life. It is something that I'm going to one day hand off to my kids, and Hannah's going to hand off to her kids. And hopefully one of our packs as business partners is we have to raise kids that aren't terrible so that they can take over the business.
Yeah.
But that like framework and that time horizon is what gives you the energy to throw so much of yourself into something.
Absolutely. And it really comes down to, so some people may or may not know this about me, but last year I lost 80 pounds.
Right on, dude.
Yeah, it was a huge difference. I feel like I should just have that photo here, so when I bring it up I can just be like, and there it is. But one thing that as I started really taking that seriously, and that was really a jumping off point for me, because that's when I started to really get serious about making sure that I was working on this and the parts of this that you'll never see on camera as much as I can, now, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Refresh me, Wes.
Oh, you're saying you lost 80 pounds.
Oh, 80 pounds. Yes, right. So that was a jumping off point for me that really, it was a catalyst. Through that, I started finding like new teachers. I found myself lost at 30 years old. I was a 30-year-old guy going, gosh, I'm looking around like this is not what I expected, and I had a really good job. I worked for a Fortune 500 company. I was making great money, and it just wasn't fulfilling, and through the physical side of things, once I started to physically start to implement these habits, changing my lifestyle. Like I was one of those people in my early 20s was like, work through the week, rager on the weekends. And you're right, like that changes, and it's like this like wide shift. It doesn't happen overnight, but all of a sudden you have all the same feelings. You're doing slightly different activities, but you're using your time just as unwisely, and I found through that a lot of teachers, and I listen to a lot of like motivational videos, when I exercise, and And one thing that really, really always spoke to me was the hardest thing isn't necessarily achieving the dream. It's that it's possible for you, you know? And that started with weight, like having that type of confidence for me was weight. And I really try to say like, that was my catalyst, but I think that there's so many ways to kind of reframe how you're looking at life to not have the non-Banana Republic perspective, you know, the I have nothing, what can I do? It's you start looking for the cracks, you know, you start hunting. And I realize now what I really wanted to get to, which is it comes down to what is your why, you know, what is that? And I think that that's a hard thing to define. You know, it took me months of literally running on a treadmill, listening to, you know, these great motivational speakers go, your why will pull you.
Yeah.
Your why, like, you know, motivation fails.
And one of the other aspects of that is you losing that weight is one of the undergirdings for your sense of self-efficacy. So I'm guessing that like this studio came together after that point, so to even be able to conceive of all this equipment arranged in such a technical manner, like that is a tremendous undertaking, and to accomplish that is really significant. But the underpinning of that is the sense of self-efficacy that I can make something materialize. I made that weight basically materialize off my body. But once you see that like action, like I decided to do something and it happened, then that meta skill is the muscle that you then keep applying to other things. So, you know, my story is I simultaneously won 2 national championships playing Ultimate Frisbee at the University of Pittsburgh while battling depression. And so I was getting that sense of self-efficacy while also, you know, struggling with that lack of meaning. But it was the constant relation to taking action that eventually got to the why, because you can feel very stuck, and maybe you're running, maybe you're listening to the motivation, you're trying to figure it out, but the underpinning of that is do not just sit around and wait for why to come to you. Go out and do something to find it. I didn't have any idea when I started the podcast, which now is over 370 episodes, that I would be founding a marketing agency with a co-founder, and we would be up to all this interesting stuff. I just knew that I needed to get in the room with interesting people doing interesting things and ask them questions about how their stuff worked. And what I would piece apart through that is, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, I do want to do that. I want to do more of that. I want to do less of that. And as you're kind of like, it's almost like one of those things where you sift it out and all the sand drops out and you have the rocks. Like, as you're kind of cleaning yourself out,
you find the gold.
Then you start to find like, wow, there's really opportunity here. And maybe you're not going to find someone throwing away bananas, but maybe you're going to find the fact that all of these executives need media created. And if you can be fluent enough in how their businesses work to be able to actually creatively apply your media skills to their problems, that's an opportunity. And that's not necessarily prescripting to someone out there who's stuck that that's what you should be doing, but it is through the sifting and winnowing that you can find that similar opportunity. And there's actually no other way to do it. There is no, like the notion that it's not Galileo, it was Newton who got hit in the head with the apple and came up with the 3 laws of physics. Well, he actually spent more than a decade studying physics before he came up with those laws. So it's actually that form of luck that is a byproduct of the search and the exploration and the building of expertise that gets you to the point to come to that realization.
It's, you know, you got to put in your work, you got to put in the time into what it is you're doing. So hopefully your effort collides with an opportunity to show it off.
Totally.
Pretty much, you know? And I mean, that's, dude, you're so eloquent. Like, I don't even have words to say. Like, that's so well put. And I'm going to buy like 10 copies of your book as soon as it's out, because I'm going to gift it like to so many people. Dude, that's I am just beside myself with how insightful you are, and I feel like I could ask you a million questions, and I have a feeling that I'm going to, but probably even more off air. So real quick, hey guys, if you're watching the show with us live, we are opening the Skype line. So we're here. If you want to chat with us, just search Filmberg on Skype, and we will we'll take a phone call or two if you guys would like to speak to us. Any questions for Aaron or ourselves? Now, what we should do though is, hey Wes, why don't you give us some more news? What's going on? What's going on in the world of Netflix?
Netflix. So, well, I was going to segue, actually. I wanted to talk about a trailer that dropped this week, and it's a perfect segue about talking about going for it, Joker.
Oh, yeah. Have you seen that trailer yet?
Yes, Joaquin Phoenix
Yeah.
is excellent.
Oh, he is. He's a national treasure at this point. He is just... I'll go see it. The trailer, I don't know if I'm feeling it, but maybe it's just because I've been burned by DC so much.
Fair enough.
You know?
Yeah, there's so many ties to, like, you know, Martin Scorsese, King of Comedy, you know, and that whole film was about, not taking no for an answer and just, like, being true, like, yeah, I'm going for it. Like, I'm going to get up on that stage. I'm going to, and that's what I get from Joker, too. It's like he wants to be this stand-up comedian and, he's taking no for an answer and just,
Yeah. I'm assuming that it's a completely new story for the Joker. I don't think that it has any basis in much of any comic
it has, like, a
origins.
sympathetic feel to it.
Yeah.
That's what I got. It's more sympathetic. It's more of a character study.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I think it's an interesting choice. Yeah, are you big into Marvel, DC? Are you a superhero fan?
I'm aware of them, and
Yeah.
I've definitely seen a fair portion of them. And basically, like I would say in the last 3 to 4 years, I've kind of just tailed off on like watching many movies in general. But I went at one point, a friend of mine took me to, it was like a day where you saw like, I don't know if it's 3 or 4 Avengers movies in a row.
Nice, yeah.
So like I know the characters. I'm like really fascinated by the business model of it. It's like the idea of Disney buying Marvel or Disney buying Star Wars and the implications for what they can do in their context, and the launch of Disney Plus is really fascinating.
Well, Disney promises new Alien movies, so...
Yeah, I mean, they're saying they're standing behind all the properties that they acquired, which they would really need to with what they're acquiring. They can't just be like, well, now it's Disney, so PG-13 or bust,
Yeah.
So I am excited to see, because one thing Disney has always done well is production. Like, it's always just next level. So we'll see. I'm a big superhero buff, so I'm excited with the 20th Century Fox merger because, X-Men in actual MCU, kind of exciting. But one thing that I have a question for you, because you are obviously highly focused and highly motivated. So do you have any like guilty pleasures that you're going to consume that content no matter what? Like, maybe not right away. We're in the age of watching it when you want. I'm a binge watcher. I don't watch things live all the time. Yeah. But I do know certain shows, even if they come on standard cable TV, like I'll just put them on the DVR until the season's done and watch them then. You have anything that's...
So I have something that's like in the middle.
Okay.
And anyone on my team would like, they're nodding along. They know what I'm about to say. Yeah. And it's studying Barstool Sports. Barstool Sports, which has some very crass, you can I'll put all the hedges in now, politically incorrect things that they go and explore. Yeah. But they are one of the most brilliant content companies ever. They do some crazy stuff. They have an event series called Rough and Rowdy, which is basically hillbilly boxing.
Oh my
and
God.
it is absurd.
Yeah.
It is definitely like guilty pleasure type of watching. But at the same time, they have a woman named Erica Nardini as their CEO who came over from AOL, who is one of the most brilliant media executives in the business. Cool. And so I'm kind of like, there's no total off switch. Like, even as I'm consuming them, I'm like, oh, look at how they're introducing new characters into their universe. I actually use the metaphor of like Marvel and some of these other characters where it's all well established. Like, you already kind of know these superheroes well. Yeah. But what they're doing with a very new business, Barstool is only like 10 years old. A lot of their biggest characters, not their very biggest, but like their new big characters, have only been with the company 2 to 3 years. And what they have are all these vehicles by which they can plug in or introduce a new character, help them gain an audience and a following and a niche within their universe, and then spin them out into their own show. So they're a comedy and a sports show, but they have a guy who does... it's a cooking show. He's called $20 Chef because all his meals you have to be able to make for less than $20 because you're not fancy.
Sweet.
And then simultaneously, all of their characters go out to the different locations for the hillbilly boxing event. But it's like one of them is doing like the interviews with the guys right after they come out after the fight, and another guy is like holding the the ropes that the guys can come in and out. And the two most well established characters, they're the commentators, but it's almost like a virus. They can like buy this entity because it was a previously existing event series, and then completely embed their personalities into the event so that it's immediately familiar if you're all involved in their universe. It's fascinating.
Oh yeah. Okay. And so what's the name of this again?
The company's Barstool Sports.
And where can we find their stuff?
It's on YouTube. They have a blog. They have an Instagram account that I think is like 5 million followers or 3 million followers or something like that. So they're a media company, and they do have things that are like, I don't agree with. Like I wouldn't handle my business that way. Yeah. But to me, what's fascinating with them is how they keep during the interview with Erica, the CEO, she said, we're born in the internet. So there's these media brands that are trying to like reorient themselves to the fact that we can do this show in, with all this modern technology, when otherwise it would have been completely inaccessible for us even a decade ago.
Yeah.
When you're born in the internet, you're born in the apps, you're fluent in the language of the internet. How do you behave? Like, what does premium content or quality content mean on the internet, where maybe it does matter that you have the great camera, but maybe it also just matters how much thought you put into the content that you're putting in front of your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I do think that, like, when we're working on any type of creative project, I'm very particular. Wes knows, like, because he's our writer, he's our staff writer here, and so I'm very particular about what goes into a script. The whole step of the way, I'm always like, well, but why? Like, well, does this need to be here? Like, let's get rid of that then, and let's not do anything until like the moment comes that we got to do something, because that's what's interesting. You know? And I think that, oh gosh, I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
Well, the writing.
Yeah. So
what's important, what goes into it.
Yeah.
I can talk about copywriting. So with copywriting, we're not writing scripts, like we're writing much, much shorter things.
Oh yeah.
And on the front of our copywriting,
and by copywriting, you mean like the text for advertisements and stuff?
Advertisements, posts. Basically, I think of copywriting as words that sell. So I think copywriting, I think the post above our LinkedIn video that sells someone on watching the video.
Gotcha.
Or the text within the video that gets someone to go to the website that we want them to.
Okay.
Or once they're on the website, the words that make them buy the ticket to the Going Deep Summit, or schedule a call so that they will hire us for some of our services. It's all copywriting, but it's words that sell anything.
Okay, cool.
And so in that same vein of being really mindful in particular with the way something's written, there's two rules that we just go over and over, whether we're, writing a cold email to someone or trying to post something publicly. It's, can we say this more simply, and can we say this more clearly? And those seem very similar, but simple is, okay, we're using 4 words when 2 will do. We're reiterating something that we've already made the point of. Or clearly, it's, can we leave without a shadow of a doubt what our intention is? Can someone leave this very short communication and have the lowest probability of misinterpreting what we're trying to say? If we're trying to say that this is what we'll do for you by producing your podcast so that you can have an audio presence to go along with your writing presence, is there any way they can misconstrue that? Can we say that in a more clear way? Because it's another thing, like in that range of skill sets that you need in order to be a great communicator, it's so easy to be misunderstood. It's so easy for someone to take what you said and because of their perception, their perspective, kind of bend that to their own way. And it takes a lot of repetitions and a lot of work to even communicate what you want to clearly.
Yeah. Everything has to be carefully considered, I guess, is what I was getting to. And then I was like, did I make my point already? But yeah, no, it's, and no matter what you're doing, I think that, the care that goes into that, like, the studio, when I was setting it up, like, that's what it was, is everything that I was placing. I was like, how does this work in the big picture? And, and one thing that I think that, from my standpoint, is that it becomes hard sometimes to look at the big picture, when you're in the middle of the tedious work, which is like what I find is, you really got to find the fun in what you're doing, find what it is that you love about all the little things that go into your big picture and not get overwhelmed. Just, you got to have a little faith, I guess is what it's called. You know, the picture will come together, you know?
Certainly.
And just keep plugging away. At least that's my idea. And the more I hear you talk, I'm like, okay, I think I'm at least on the right trajectory, you know? Now, normally we ask our guests to throw out, you know, if our viewers found themselves on a desert island, you know, something like what movies or television shows would you say they have access to stave off insanity? But for you, I think it would be a lot more interesting. Let's say that we have a slew of highly creative young, you know, high school, college people watching right now.
Okay.
What 3 books would you say would be most beneficial to somebody who's looking to, through creativity, build their end game like you have with Piper Creative?
Okay. So the first book is the most impactful book that I've ever read, but I have to add the caveat before you go to it that it is dense. It is not an easy read. Like if you're not reading books regularly, I steer people away from it because it's intense.
Yeah.
It's a book called Anti-Fragile by Nicholas Nassim Taleb. And basically, so Taleb's story is he was a trader on Wall Street and then went into academia studying statistics. And basically what that experience granted him was academics who'd only ever been in the journals and the studies, had none of the real world experience that he did. And really effective traders, when we're talking about stocks, bonds, anything, they understand probability into their core. Because if they don't, they lose. So he had that and the academic intellect to be able to jockey with those characters. And what he came to was this kind of fundamental idea that we misunderstand risk, and that we misunderstand, and if you misunderstand risk, you basically are making all your decisions wrong. So anti-fragile is the idea that what is the opposite of fragile? A lot of people would say sturdy, strong, tough. But what that actually means, if you think of fragile, it's, you know, a piece of china and I come running through the room and like the table, it falls off the table and it breaks because it's very easily breakable. And we think of the opposite. We think of a word that is less likely to fall off the table and break. So like a rubber donut or something. But that's not actually the opposite, because when there's disorder, something fragile breaks. When there's disorder, something sturdy just resists breaking. It doesn't become better. What gains from disorder? And this idea of anti-fragile is, if there's chaos going on and life is chaotic, right? What characteristics, what traits will allow you to succeed in a world of chaos? And that is the concept of being anti-fragile. So the book is about breaking down what qualities make you primed to take advantage of chaos. And if life is chaotic, you should aim to be anti-fragile.
Absolutely.
So, for example, taking better care of your body is a perfect example of something that makes you anti-fragile, because it's going to give you more energy to deploy when you want to deploy it. It's going to allow all sorts of downstream effects. You're going to, you know, live longer because you're taking care of yourself, which means you have more time to accomplish your goal. Another example of that, though, is the idea of keeping cash on hand and saving. So a lot of people think savings, well, you know, my car breaks or some unexpected expense comes up and I can handle it. But the opposite of that, that's really, once again, like staying strong. And when something bad happens, not being broken by it. The opposite is when you see that opportunity, when you see the bananas that are being thrown away, and I won't give them to you for free, but I'll give them to you for $1,500. You have the $1,500 to grab them and then sell them for $4,000. And that's the opposite. That ability to like step up and take advantage of chaos is the meta pattern that Samuel Zemurray obviously embodies. So that's one that if you're like chomping at the bit and you feel like you need to go make it happen, everyone that I've ever spoken with who has read that book entirely says that it has changed the way they thought fundamentally. My very good friend Mike Dariano, who spoke at the last Going Deep Summit, said it's like someone, if your mind is like this cavernous cave, it's like someone went into a different part of the cave and turned on a light bulb, and all of a sudden you can like use this other area of your brain that you hadn't been able to previously. But once again, it's very dense. Like, you're not just going to like read 3 pages and brush through and get there.
You have like the best analogies ever.
Your analogy game is on point. I bet you are a sick meme maker. All right.
I do enjoy a good meme. I do enjoy a good meme. So that is number 1.
Okay.
And then the question once again was young creatives who are looking to establish themselves. That was the question. Yeah. So the next book that I would recommend, and this is much more of an entry level one, is a story of Steve Martin, and it's called Born Standing Up, and it's the autobiography of a comedian named Steve Martin. You guys are familiar with if you're film guys.
Yeah.
But a lot of people maybe know him as like an actor, or maybe like at the end of his career more of like a actor in kind of like cheesy like family comedies. But he was actually kind of like a raunchy stand-up comedian to start.
Steve Martin. Yes.
And he brought it. And what his autobiography, and it's very short, it's very consumable, you can listen to it on Audible and it's a cool experience, is this maniacal way, and you're kind of talking about like the maniacal way that you're pursuing your skill set and the growth of this, the maniacal way that he went at becoming the best stand-up comedian on earth, which he was for a period of time. And he actually like quit and backed away from it because he would just show up and people would like already be laughing because of his reputation, and it kind of like fizzled out some of his love for the game. But when he was starting, he was so maniacal about adding those skills. There was no, I'm gonna like trade a weekend off or make this kind of like hedge so that I can do something else. He was 110% all in. And that's like when you're starting off, that's part of the story that you need. You need that narrative framework of, to be that great, you have to be all in. So Born Standing Up by Steve Martin, Anti-Fragile by Taleb, and then I might need a second to think of a third one.
Hey, that's okay, because I did want to throw out, while we were talking about chaos, one of my favorite lines from Game of Thrones, and it's actually something I've lived by. Chaos is a ladder, and that's been true. Any company I've worked, I've been in sales is what I've done historically for my professional career. And anytime, something new's added to what you're expected to sell, or anytime the game's changing at all, you hear a collective, and I always excelled in a sales environment because I never thought that way. I was like, ooh, something's changing. Let me be the first person to figure out this new rule, and I'll just be the best, because chaos is a ladder. And
Certainly.
If you look at it like, it's just one of my favorite lines, and the fact that you went so into that with, Yes.
So in that same vein, and this, I'm kind of seeing this book as fitting in between these two. So if you went Born Standing Up and you're not quite ready for Anti-Fragile, you should read a book called The End of Jobs by Taylor Pearson. And the idea there is, if you think of, once again, chaos, but also just the progression of the type of work that you want to do, I think that anyone who identifies as a creative is basically very against repetitive tasks, being forced to draw within the lines, all these kind of metaphors. And what The End of Jobs explains is that just by the reality of the technological wave that's moving through us, is a lot of the repetitive tasks are going to be automated away. And that's not just manual labor or like, putting the widget on the thing, but it's also, frankly, 80% of what lawyers do is copy and pasting contracts and changing a few words, or even white collar roles. And so the creative instinct, I tend to think, is really like it's like a subconscious survival instinct where I have to do something creative or else I'm in really big trouble. And I think The End of Jobs kind of articulates a framework in two instances. Number one, what one of the most important skills is going to be is the ability to make decisions with less than complete information. So if you're given a really cookie cutter task, the idea there is I can kind of give you all the information, and then I can take your idiocy or your lack of experience or whatever it is out of the equation, and I can just get the thing done that I need done. But the issue with that is once you clearly define something so well, that's going to be handed off to some form of automation and taken away from you. But if you can get into environments where you're making decisions with less than complete information, and can do that well, that is a very sustainable edge. That is what Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, that is what the best entrepreneurs ever, they're all fantastic at making decisions with incomplete information. End of Jobs talks about that, but then it also talks about the stair-step approach out of those positions that are very repetitive. And it's not that you're going to go from some role where everything is clearly defined for you and you know exactly what your role is, all the way to founder of a software as a service company that does 3 million in revenue and completely change the game. It's actually a very like well-worn stair-step approach of, you know, maybe having a side project and then becoming a freelancer and then building a productized service and then using that information from the productized service to build a repeatable software solution that can be stacked on top of the productized service. And then you're emerging way out of that system that you may be feeling stuck in.
Sure.
And so that is something that I would put kind of in between the, like, you just need to grind Steve Martin Born Standing Up story and the super like philosophical Anti-Fragile.
Yeah. That's awesome. I will be picking those books up, man. You know, you hit all the points, and it's like I've listened to so many stories, so many videos as I've been on my journey, and you encapsulate so many of these qualities that I think a lot of people make their livings off of trying to teach people these are the qualities that you're looking for, and reading is one of them. Like, I mean, I spend a lot of time reading too. Typically I'm learning very quickly here tonight, not as many books as I should, you know, it's a lot of stuff online and stuff, but you've definitely really sparked an interest in me to check out a couple of those. So,
well, thank you for the kind words. And I'm not a snob in the sense that it should only be books. Like, there are blog posts, there's all sorts of ways to get the information that you need, and particularly with some of the tech stuff, it's actually much more like, are you willing to dive into the manual? Are you willing to dive into the forum? So it's never ever like there's one way to do it, there's one cookie cutter method, but it's going to be, do you know where to get the information you need, and are you willing to do the work to make that happen? And whatever avenue that is, like, you know, there aren't a lot of books. There's books about like music theory, but if you're really trying to produce amazing music, you need to get in the lab and experiment and just figure out the equipment, right? So it's never going to be one thing, but for what I'm trying to do, I have to know the stories of the other great entrepreneurs in order to have a chance of being one myself.
And what I think that is good is that, especially with the way that I read and that I do consume media, it is all very much with a specific point. And I'm sure that, you know, when you're reading a lot of these books, you do have a specific point, like you're looking for information. But I find that what I'm realizing is that I have not been on myself enough to go out and find new material that presents new ideas to me. You know, it's like and so it's like, you know, you just spark something in me, which I think is really exciting. And I think that that's a good point. You hear it all the time. Oprah, you know, Elon Musk, all these people, all these big names, they read constantly, you know? And I think that was just the thought that sparked in my head, is that, you know, what I'm hearing from you, and it's all just so profound to me because it's very well articulated. But it's a lot of things that I hadn't heard before, framed just in that way. And I love the word choice, the framework word choice that you're using, because that's what it is.
So Berkshire Hathaway is one of the biggest companies on earth, conglomerate. Many people know the name Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest men on earth after Bezos, but his business partner, Charlie Munger, is actually like the guy who has, they're called Mungerisms. He has all sorts of like witty one-liners. He's very, he's very like cranky old man, but he like knows his stuff. It's really cool. And he has a quote where he's like, I've never met someone really wise who wasn't also reading all the time. It's it's just a rule to him. Like, there's no other way to go about doing it. And this is someone who, you know, spends all his time reading. And it's like also the thing where you don't do it. The reason I added that big caveat to the beginning of Anti-Fragile is I have people who are like, I want to start reading. What book should I read? And what they're doing, understandably so, is this framework of, you like reading, help me like reading by telling me what's fun to read. And it's like, well, what I like to read is like nerdy business history. That doesn't mean that that's going to work for you. I told a friend who is a complete sports nut to start with this sports book or that sports book, or like literally just start reading things that you like. Because if you read enough, you'll get there, but don't put it on yourself that you have to go and like swing for the super dense philosophy scribe. If you like movies and you want to, and maybe you like are just a fiend for comic books, maybe read a biography of some of your favorite comic book writers and then find out who they liked and they read. And then it's going to become this interwoven narrative, just like all the great comic books, but it's going to actually become the real life stories. And then you have the foundation on which to find the other things to read. My stuff just fits together because I'm a business nerd.
Gosh, I feel like nerd has a negative connotation, man, but like I feel like
I dig it.
I feel like you're that guy, when girls are like, I just like nerds. Like you're totally the nerd that they're talking about, because like there's nothing nerdy about you, dude. Like it's been refreshing. This has been a completely different episode for us. You've come in with just a wealth of greatness, and so this was a lot of fun. Your answers were also great. I think that this was our first like island, what are you giving to them? And it wasn't even that, like this is my favorite one so far. So I'm really excited about that. Now, is there anything else? Is there anything else that you would like to plug for what you're doing? Try to point some people over to your stuff even more?
If people found this valuable, I would encourage them to check out episode 361 of my podcast with a guy named Jason Wolf. And the reason for that is I think Jason is the closest thing we have in Pittsburgh to a story like some of the ones that I told you of Samuel Zemurray and some of these other characters. Jason grew up in the Milton Hershey School for Orphan Boys. He was living out of his car in his mid-20s, and he taught himself to code, this is in the 90s, from a CompuServe book. He went on to found multiple companies that exited for $20 million, $15 million, $22 million, and $120 million. Now, along the way, he didn't just become immensely wealthy. He also set up all of his companies and his life so that all the members of his employees could participate in the winnings as well. And there's much more there if you listen to that podcast episode. 361 of Going Deep with Aaron Watson. But that is another one of the stories that I just think more and more and more people need to hear. Because if this guy grew up in the Milton Hershey School for Orphan Boys, was living out of his car in his 20s, and had to teach himself to code from a book, what excuse do you have?
I agree so much. I'm subscribing to your podcast right now. This is happening live on the air.
Boom, got one.
Going deep. Oops.
I have to say, you'll really appreciate this, but locally, I got to give this shout out. So I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones.
Yes.
But I love when, films and TV kind of go beyond the screen.
Okay.
And I love seeing what they're doing with Game of Thrones right now. They have a pop-up bar, Market Square.
Oh, really?
That you can check out leading up to the series,
really smart.
Season 8. So that's cool. At Permanis, they're doing a Game of Thrones trivia night. And yes, they have Game of Thrones Oreos.
Really?
So those are coming out. So I love seeing stuff.
Why didn't they call them Game of Throneos? Like, I don't know. There's just so much there that they could have done. Yeah, no, the thing in Market Square is going to be really cool. If you're a fan, like, a geeky fan here, so I will definitely be checking it out.
My girlfriend and I watch every episode, so I'm all about it.
Oh, nice. So are you excited? You stoked for the premiere?
Totally. I'm just, it's, I hope it ends well. It's like, the expectations are so high. I'm just trying to temper it so I'm not over the top of it.
It can only be so good.
Of course.
And, where the source material, we've run out of that. I don't know. I'm big into fantasy literature, so I've read a lot of I've never gotten into that one because I'm in the middle of this other tome-like series. But yeah, so it's like everybody's a little worried because, it could get a little fan servicey, which maybe it should, because it's, it is a TV show. There's something to be said about that. But I'm definitely stoked. This guy, it took me 2 years, finally talked him into watching Game of Thrones. He just started season 7, 3 days ago.
Oh, so you're
episode 2. So
he's going to be able to watch the finale of 7 right before we watch the premiere of season 8. So we're definitely stoked on that.
Awesome.
We'll be live tweeting and doing stuff. So maybe we'll see you on the Twitter sphere and
absolutely
get some thoughts from you as well. Well, guys, hey, I just want to say thank you so much for watching our show. It has been awesome being here again. And we have yet another giveaway. Here, let me go. Let me dig down into my cave here. All right, guys. So, giving away yet another Manfrotto tripod. Be Free 290 Lite. It is a fluid head tripod, so it is going to be ideal for videographers and cinematographers with smaller DSLRs and entry-level cameras. If you like this and what we're doing here, please subscribe to our channel, drop a like, and comment on this video, and you're automatically added to our giveaway. On top of that, we are pushing to get to 100 subscribers on YouTube so we can get a dedicated on YouTube, because you got to have that. So guys, go subscribe to us. If you're watching us on Facebook, please subscribe on YouTube. And once we get to 100 subscribers, the day I wake up and there's a 100 or more, I will do an immediate live video where we will be giving away a special prize that we'll announce at that time. But I promise you guys, you want to be a part of it. So Wes, do you have anything else for us before we head out for the week?
One other big thing that's happening locally is the Steel City Con next weekend, April 12th to the 14th.
Steel City Con, yeah, that's excellent because Rob Schneider's going to be there, and Corey Feldman.
Special guest, yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, well, Filmberg will be there just as attendees. We will be just out there having a good time. So, and you know, who knows, maybe maybe we can talk Rob Schneider into being on the show. I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm 4 degrees of separation from Rob Schneider.
Right on.
You want to hear the story real quick?
Yeah.
And then we'll sign off, okay? So I went to high school with a young woman. She owns her own creative company up in New York City named Shayla Benoit, and her father was childhood best friends. I believe they lived in Jupiter, Florida, a little bit north of West Palm Beach, and was childhood friends with Rob Schneider. And I know this is true for a fact because she brought in like an old, like not even Polaroid style, but just like an old photo from the 70s, you know, maybe even 60s, of Rob Schneider next to someone who obviously is her father, because it looks so much like her just as a young man. And so, I don't know, I'm going to throw that out there. Rob, I know your childhood best friend, you know. But hey, that's how I'm 4 degrees of separated from Rob Schneider.
Right on.
It's crazy how the world, how close but far the world can feel sometimes, you know. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We will be back next week. Let us know. Hey, drop us a line. If you like us doing the shows at an earlier time, please let us know. We'll open a poll on Facebook, so check that out. Because we want to be here when it works best for you guys. So thank you so much. I'm Pollock Taylor with Filmberg. As always, follow our story and let us help you tell yours. All right. Okay.